Kalyani, and in fact, you have brought about that very, very important point about the fact that these are just emergency measures, and what the government essentially needs at the point is a year-round solution that is not just implemented, 3 weeks before or 3 weeks later when people complain of pollution, and of course when the media also goes into overdrive covering all of these cases that we are seeing. Of course, Dr. Vinayak Agarwal would agree to that. He, of course, is the Senior Director, Cardiology Fortis Gurgaon. Doctor, help us understand the kind of cases that you're getting, because several reports that have been published, they state that air pollution is not just related to issues with your lungs, not just is related to burning of your eyes or your throat getting choked up, but it is very much related to your blood pressure and eventually how your heart functions.
Oh, absolutely. I think, thank you for having me on the show. And I can only say that if there is a true emergency which exists today for our children and for us, I think it's the air pollution. And we are not talking about something which is new. I mean, right from 1990s, you've had studies which have directly linked air pollution, especially PM 2.5, to adverse health effects, including heart attacks, COPD, cancers, even blood pressure increases. You have so much of, long-term and short-term effects of air pollution that it is very surprising that nobody has actually taken control of this issue for so many years in cities, in Indian cities. Now, the kind of cases that we're seeing is, you have to understand that India is a young nation. The average age of an Indian is 28 years. And we are seeing a lot of heart attacks in the young population today. Every fifth Indian which is dying is below 40 years of age because of a heart attack. Every second heart attack occurs in an individual below 55 years of age. So a working class, the heart of our working population is actually at risk. And air pollution definitely is among the top 10 mortality markers or risk factors for death world over. And in India, if you look at cities like Delhi NCR with AQI touching 500, can you even begin to imagine the impact it would have not only on heart attack risk, stroke risk, COPD, respiratory diseases where people come with acute exacerbation of asthmas. You have young children who are perpetually ill because of such high concentration of PM2, nitrogen dioxide, etc. So I think it is, you can probably link air pollution to almost every single disease structure, especially cancers in the long run. And unfortunately, it's not like you can see what air pollution is doing to us in the background. It's not very evident.
Doctor, simple question. I want to step in over here and ask you a simple question. When AQI exceeds the level of 450, what kind of cardiac distress does it bring in on someone with a healthy heart and someone, with already prior cardiac issues? And apart from, the impact on one's heart and lungs, what are the long-term impacts on, let's say, a lot of times in pollutions, your eyes are burning, you get severe headaches. So if you can explain that to us step by step, when the AQI specifically exceeds 450 is what Delhi faced today?
That's a very good question. So just to give you a little bit of a figure there, the main particle, the main component of air pollution is PM 2.5, which is directly linked with heart attacks. There are ultrafine particles which are less than, say, 0.1, microns, which are even more able to pass through the lungs into the circulation and cause cardiovascular side effects. The moment you touch 450, so any AQI above 150, you are actually having a large amount of PM 2.5 in your respiratory system, which is going in and is affecting your blood as well, and eventually your heart. So with every 10, so normal limits are about less than 30 microgram per meter cube. Every 10 microgram increase in PM 2.5, you would have 10% increase in risk of heart attacks. We are seeing more heart attacks right now coming to the emergencies, more heart failures coming in, more sudden cardiac deaths, more respiratory issues like bronchial asthma, etc. People who have a pre-existing cardiac disease are at much more risk because a lot of times they come with a combination of respiratory and cardiac issues together and are much more sicker than what otherwise they would be.
Right, Doctor. Let me ask you and bring you in, Ms. Thembe, Kalyani Thembe. Now, you must have also seen that countries like Singapore, Canada, and the United States have issued advisories to the citizens. And in fact, they've gone on to issue these advisories, travel advisories, on account of not any massive or major activity. It's nothing related to terrorism. It's nothing related to safety issues, but it is related to the air pollution condition in the national capital. It really then goes on to say the government's approach to tackling pollution. But what message does this send out to the world that a country which wants to become Viksit Bharat by 2047 cannot solve the problem of bad air, something as basic as bad air?
We are right now not able to solve this problem, but we cannot lose hope that we can never solve this problem. But yeah, that does show that just how bad our air pollution situation is right now. Like if developed countries are issuing advisories to not travel to India, which means how much of toxic pollution that we, the citizens of this country, are actually inhaling. Now, when you and I are talking, we have the luxury of sitting in our house and doing this conversation, or not going to work. But as doctor also pointed it out, this exposure has been there for the longest time, and it starts at 150 AQL level itself. And if you think about people who do not actually have the option of sitting at their home, the people who have to get out, who have to work daily wage workers, or somebody who is working on other construction sites or similar things, they are also affected equally. So while what you were saying that these other countries have issued advisories, it is actually throwing a light on things that we already know. Things are bad and we have to work on it to make it better. And saying that we cannot make it work, it's actually it's not an optimistic way to look at it. But I think if we work on sectoral interventions, as I also said earlier, if we look at sectoral interventions like vehicular pollution, like CND pollution, and all of these different ways through which pollution is the quantum of pollution that is getting added to the air, we can bring about the change. If Beijing can bring about change, why can't Delhi NCR?
Rightly said so. If Beijing can bring about the change, why can't Delhi NCR? But my question to you, Kalyani Thembe, is there is often, especially in the case of Delhi, there is often a blame game between Delhi government and the neighboring states. From a managing and, let's say from a management and a policy perspective, according to you, where does the buck stop? Like, who should take onus for this? Which single authority, according to you, has the mandate and is failing us in this case?
It would be wrong to put the blame on one single entity at this point, because as in the US, they had faced a similar issue. Then later they had this policy or framework called as wherein the neighboring or the upwind states will be responsible for the pollution in downwind state, and their attainment levels won't be reached until and unless the downwind states or the states they are passing on that pollution to have also reached the attainment. So here, like putting a blame on one single state, or may it be the neighboring state, or may it be the Delhi NCR area, it is actually wrong, because it is a collective responsibility. Now, Indo-Gangetic Plain, it's an region, it's an air pollution hotspot. It is entire region that gets affected by air pollution, and because it's a transboundary air pollution, putting the blame on one single state would be wrong, but then absolving of any state would also be equally wrong. It is a collective responsibility. Like, for example, in Delhi during winters, even though 70% of the pollution is coming from neighboring states, 30% of pollution Delhi itself is responsible. And this is just the case for during winters. Now, for other seasons, this situation might be different. The point of saying that is, regional cooperation is what is required right now. We cannot sit and put the blame on any one state or any one country for that matter. Even the neighboring countries are getting blamed most of the times, but doing that will only delay the actual action.
Right, Kalyani, while a cohesive and comprehensive effort at combating air pollution is needed, but at the moment, you do have, Delhi is run by BJP. At the center is also BJP. So BJP is where the buck should stop with. And of course, the chief minister should definitely crack down on all elements that are causing pollution. In fact, what we've noted in the past couple of months here in New Delhi is the fact that, the government took a lot of time before invoking these very, very stringent measures. The complete ban on BS3 petrol and BS4 diesel four-wheelers. Authorities, very recently they've directed to conduct classes in hybrid mode. The entry of trucks is banned into Delhi. So what have all of these pollution bodies and committees really been thinking about before invoking these measures? The air quality, if it plummets to even 200, that is also, very bad, especially when you have kids here, when you have old people here who are more prone to any sort of diseases that doctor has spoken about. So let's also make this point very clear that the accountability here is with the government. Of course, that comprehensive strategy to bring in other states to combat this problem is important, but the Delhi government, the central government really needs to crack the whip on all the elements that are causing pollution. But we have also Dr. Again joining us, Dr. Vinayak Agarwal. Let me also bring in your attention to some data that we've gathered, some stats. Now, Delhi's air drove 2 lakh respiratory illness cases in 3 years, and that's according to what government data has presented. This, of course, is between the time period of 2022 to 2025. Now, these figures could be much higher this year, but as a medical practitioner and as somebody who has seen, these cases constantly come to you and, of course, to your colleagues, would you, as a medical practitioner, believe this data that's come out? And second part to my question is, how can we protect ourselves when you spoke about the kind of cardiac issues that people as young as, perhaps in their 40s and people below 50 are also getting these cardiac arrests, then how can we protect ourselves?
So, it's a complex scenario here. If you look at the data that you just quoted, I'm pretty sure it's an understatement. So let's take it like this. If we have 2.5 crore people in Delhi, we are all exposed to this air pollution. All of us would have some varying degree of, respiratory illnesses, whether it's say a running nose, whether it's congestion, whether it's a full-blown bronchial asthma, etc. The point is, the priorities are missing. We have not prioritized looking at air pollution with the same level as we look at, say, diabetes or hypertension or heart failure or HIV or tuberculosis. Right now, air pollution is probably going to be killing and affecting morbidity and mortality is going to be much higher than any other illness in our country. Because most of our states, actually most of our cities have very high air pollution AQIs. Having said that, let's take an example of runners, the endurance runners who run marathon, who are practicing in the in early morning air who are running. So when you inhale and exhale much deeper when you're running, imagine the kind of load that you're inhaling in. So even very, very fit people would be exposed to large quantum of these air pollutants, including PM 2.5, ultrafine particles, etc. And one of the causes, which I don't think we can prove it right now, but I'm sure if there is more research, the sudden cardiac death risk, which we see in the very fit people, could also be linked to air pollution.
Right. Well, on that note, Dr. Agarwal and Ms. Kalyani, thank you very much for taking the time out. Of course, this tragedy that we are facing right now, this crisis of air pollution, it is a health emergency, and we do wish that governments, whether state or a central government, they treat it like a health emergency, as pollution has been treated in many other countries, including the Western countries, and of course, close to our country, close in our neighborhood, China as well, which went on war footing and addressed this issue in 10 years flat. We do hope that sort of an emergency approach is taken in by the Indian government as well. But for the moment, thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking to us here on our big debate on India Tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen.